really excited to be here with you. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Haverstick. I'm the manager of safety advocacy for Good Baby International, which includes our CYBEX brand. And we are here today for our CYBEX US Virtual Safety Summit. Just a few announcements before we get started. I think we are all very familiar with Zoom webinars at this point, but just as a reminder, all of our attendees are on listen-only mode right now. So you may not unmute and you may not control the function of your camera. However, we would love for you to be engaged with us. So right now we are sending chat messages about where you're joining us from. So find that chat. Send us messages over there, communicate. I saw people saying hi to each other. I love that. This is a great way to still stay engaged even when we can't be with each other in person. But we also would really love for you to ask questions. We have a number of really engaging presentations to go through today. So we would love for you to find the Q&A button in your Zoom webinar. And please use the Q&A area for our questions. It just helps us keep things so we don't lose the really important questions that you're asking. We want to get through as many of those as possible. If we can't get through all of the questions today, we will help to link you up with the appropriate speaker at the end after our event is done. For the CPSTs that are on the line with us today, this session has been pre-approved for 1.5 CEUs. You must be present for the entire event to receive your CEU credit. We will provide an attendance certificate and a follow-up email tomorrow. That email will come directly from Zoom about 24 hours from now, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the session. We also have an evaluation at the end of the session. I'm going to talk about that a lot then, but I just want you to be thinking about that up front. I think evaluations are really so important. We would love to hear your feedback on this and see how and what ways we can improve this in the future. We're also recording this presentation right now, so it will be posted following the event at carseateducation.org. We will again share that information later. But I wanted to make sure it's clear that both our car seat technicians and our retail partners that are on the line are able to access this recording at that website. So it's available to anybody. So if you have a colleague that could not join us live today, they can always check out that recording. It'll probably be up there in about a week. So with that, we have a really exciting presentation planned for today and a really diverse audience. As I mentioned, we have retail partners on the line, as well as a number of certified car seat technicians. And as you saw from our chat over here, they are from all over the world. So we're really happy you're all here to join us. Just to give a little overview before we get started, I'm going to introduce our speakers. So we have a few special guests. I wanted to make sure you know who they are. We're going to do a quick panel presentation with our first two speakers. Then we'll stop and take some questions. Then we wanted to get into a regulatory update. There is a lot going on in the world of child passenger safety today. So we wanted to bring you all up to speed on what some of those regulatory changes are in effect now and happening in the near future. And then we're going to take you to Germany for a tour of our safety center and a live crash test. Which is going to be really exciting. And then we'll close out with our CYBEX team in Charlotte, sharing some new products that we have in the CYBEX line. And finally, we will close out with a raffle. We are excited to share some of our products with you. You need to be present to win, so please stick around until the end, and we will announce the winners at that time. So, to get us started, I want to introduce our first two speakers, Jennifer Booge from the National Safety Council and Cass Herring from Safe Kids Worldwide. Jennifer has worked in the area of injury prevention and traffic safety for more than 25 years. In her role with the National Safety Council, she serves as a subject matter expert and is a program manager in the roadway practice area. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in community health education, and she coordinates training and provides support to technicians, state coordinators, vehicle and car seat manufacturers, and Indian Health Services representatives through her work with the National Digital Car Seat Check Form. Additionally, Jennifer works with the Check to Protect Vehicle Recall Program, encouraging all drivers to check for and repair open safety recalls. She is a nationally certified child passenger safety technician instructor and is a past chairperson of the National Child Passenger Safety Board. Kath Herring is the Director of Child Occupant Protection at Safe Kids Worldwide. She serves as the certifying body representative for the National Child Passenger Safety Board. She began her career in child passenger safety in 2012 and has served in injury prevention and tribal liaison roles for the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, Safe Kids Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma Highway Safety Office. She is a passionate advocate for providing inclusive and equitable education to all communities and intent on creating content and resources that meet families where they are. She is a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and recently relocated to Maryland. She enjoys spending time with her partner and their 2 dogs and cat. Sounds a bit like my house. There's a lot of furry friends. Thank you, Jennifer and Cass, for being here. You're going to hear from them in just a minute. But I also wanted to introduce a couple of folks from our team that you're going to hear from in the second half of our presentations today. First, we have Florian Scharff, who's in our German office. He's worked in child safety since 2011 and has been with CYBEX since January of 2016. Currently, he serves as the Senior Manager for Testing and Qualifications. He's responsible for the 2 labs we have at CYBEX campus, the Safety Center that we're going to tour with him today, and the Product Test Lab where we run tests for technical lifestyle products like strollers, prams, and furniture. And then we have Jon McGuire, who is our VP of Product Management for CYBEX USA and Canada. He's been working for CYBEX in this capacity since October of 2016. Previously, Jon worked at Britax for 9 years and was responsible for product management, marketing, and project management. Jon is passionate about child safety and consumer insights, product development, and bringing new innovative products and features to market. He lives in South Carolina, just south of Charlotte, North Carolina, with his wife and 3 children. So thank you all for being here today. We have this really great lineup, and we are excited to go ahead and kick this off with Jennifer Booge from the National Safety Council.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I am so excited to be here with you today to share with you some of our most recent data that we've collected utilizing the National Digital Car Seat Check Form. So let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who are not familiar with the National Digital Car Seat Check Form, it is a digital tracking system that allows technicians in the field to collect car seat inspection data electronically. So I'll be covering where we're at nationwide, what those numbers are looking like, and what we're finding with some of the data that we've been able to collect. So first and foremost, I want to start with our partners. The National Digital Car Seat Check Form is managed by the National Safety Council. We work closely with our friends at Westat that do all of our data analysis. They make all of us look really, really smart. They take all of that raw data and compile it into these beautiful data dashboards and table tools that are available to all users. We also work closely with our friends at Tennessee Tech University iCube. They are the software developers. They maintain the HIPAA compliant server. They assist technicians with their accounts and setting up agency and program accounts as well. The National Digital Car Seat Check Form is funded through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and we also receive program support through our friends at AAA Mountain West Group. Additionally, we lean on our friends at the National Child Passenger Safety Board to make sure that the information that's being collected through the NDCF is aligning with what's happening out in the field, the trends and patterns, making sure that we're collecting the information in a way that supports the work that technicians out in the field are doing. So let's talk a little bit more about the NDCF and how to access it. So all certified child passenger safety technicians have access to the NDCF. It is a free resource, again, funded through NHTSA or the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Technicians do not need to have program affiliation to utilize the NDCF. Just these numbers are hot off the press. I was so excited to be able to share with you our most current numbers. You can see here that we have almost 149,000 car seat checks that have been entered into this electronic data collection tool. We average somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 seat checks per month. And of course, we're leaning up to National Child Passenger Safety Week, Child Passenger Safety Month here in the US. I'm anxious to see what our numbers will look like in September, but just to give you some perspective, from June 30th to July 31st, we had 6,276 seat checks entered in. So that number continues to grow. That just means that technicians are doing amazing work out in the field and working one-on-one with caregivers. To provide some program perspective on where we're at on a national level, looking at this map that was just recently updated, you'll notice some different colors on the map. The darker colors mean that those states have either adopted the use of the NDCF statewide, or it's a requirement for their programs that they provide financial support to, or car seats for distribution. The mid blue shade is states that are strongly encouraging the use of the NDCF, with many of those states looking at utilizing the NDCF on a statewide basis, again, whether it's a requirement for all technicians or for those programs that receive state support. And the light blue colors, we have a lot of local level programs that have adopted the use of the NDCF. The digital check farm has been around for about 6 years now. It's been really growing organically, and so it's great to be able to see the work that technicians are doing and the data that's being fed into the NDCF. So I wanted to just go over some of our data analysis that we were able to do with those seat checks, the data collected up through June 30th, 2023. So we're utilizing those 142,000 seat checks. What we're finding through the NDCF data is that about 60% of the checks are those rear-facing seats. What that means is that technicians are doing a really great job at reaching out to those expectant parents, to those caregivers with newborns. They're coming in for assistance with their car seats, but we are kind of missing the mark a little bit, as you'll see in the data, for those older children. We seem to see fewer older children coming through our inspections. Of those 60% of those rear-facing seats, 57% were infants or unborn children. We have an overall misuse rate in that category of about 62.6%. So when we look at our, just a breakdown of the types of seats on arrival, again, you'll see about 60% of those are those rear-facing car seats. We see a significant decrease in the number of children coming to check events in forward-facing car seats, with only 12% of those children riding in forward-facing seats coming to car seat inspections. So what does that mean for us as providers, working with caregivers, as retailers reaching out to caregivers and providing them with the education? We need to encourage those caregivers to come back. They're coming initially, but what can we do to draw those caregivers to come back to receive additional assistance when they transition those children to forward-facing seats? Again, you'll see another significant decrease in the number of children that are coming that are riding in booster seats. Only 4% of the seat checks involved children that arrived in booster seats, and only 3% were those children riding in regular seatbelts. So we're going to go through a breakdown of what some of our misuses are and taking a little closer look at the data. So our misuse rates by type of seat, you'll notice here that caregivers seem to do the best with those rear-facing only car seats and booster seats. Our highest misuse rate that we're seeing in our data is our forward-facing car seats with the harness at almost 80%. Still 62% misuse for those rear-facing only seats is not great, but when we compare it to our forward-facing with the harness being almost 80%, we see a significant jump in that misuse. So what does that mean for our outreach? What does that mean for our education as we're working with our consumers and we're working with caregivers? I had Westat pull some data on our misuse by age range. And while this doesn't seem significant, if we look at those 1 to 2s all the way up to the 4 to 6s, it seems pretty similar in numbers, but we do see a slight bump in those 3 to 4-year-olds. So we can analyze that data and identify that those are children who are transitioning typically into booster seats too soon, or we're just seeing a lot more misuse with those children once we turn them around forward facing. So our seatbelt misuse, and this has to do with our installation of the car seats. You're going to kind of see some trends as I navigate through the next couple of slides. Our seatbelt misuse rate for installation is about 61%. So caregivers are not doing a great job installing those car seats with the seatbelt. So what we did is we did a breakdown of what those top misuses would be based on the different errors that we're seeing. So number one at the top of the list is the seatbelt is too loose. At almost 40% of the installs came in with the car seat being too loose, followed closely by the seatbelt being used in conjunction with the lower anchors. So we're still seeing a lot of caregivers using both systems when they shouldn't be for that installation. And then also followed closely by seatbelt retractor is not locked. So not taking the time to lock that seatbelt. If we did a comparison between our seatbelt installations and our lower anchor installations, you'll see here that caregivers are doing a much better job with our lower anchors. Our misuse rate is still at about 43%, but they're doing a significantly better job at installing them with the lower anchors than they are with the seatbelts. Again, at the top of the list is that it's too loose. So our message, as you can see, we're kind of seeing a pattern here, is to encourage caregivers on how to, and show them how to install those car seats to get them in nice and snug in their vehicles. And again, second on the list is using it in conjunction with the seat belts. When we look at our tether misuse is at 54%. Now, what's alarming to me is the number of caregivers that aren't using a top tether. Our tether not used comes in at 68%. So of those car seats that have a top tether, so forward facing seats, 68% of those caregivers are not using the top tether. So we want to be thinking about what our message is going to be and what kind of outreach strategies and education we're going to use as we're working with consumers and we're working with caregivers out in the field. We want to encourage those caregivers to use that tether. When we look at our harness misuse rate, and again, this is overall misuse rate is about 49%. And breaking down those top misuses, again, coming in at number one, is that the harness is too loose at 34%. Followed closely by harness slot in the wrong placement. So it's either too high or too low. And then the chest clip is either too high or too low. So again, we have a lot of work to do to educate caregivers on the proper use of those harnesses and making sure that they're in the right slot. We're seeing a decrease with a number of seats that have those no rethread harnesses where we can just simply raise and lower, but caregivers are oftentimes not understanding the functionality of those, that ability to be able to raise and lower that harness. So next we looked at whether children are moving into seatbelts too soon. So we took a breakdown of those children that arrived in a seatbelt, how many of them actually left in a seatbelt? So that was the appropriate system for them to be using. And you'll see here that we did a breakdown of 30% of the children who arrived in a seatbelt left in a forward-facing harnessed car seat. 46% of those children left in a booster seat. And the next one is alarming to me that we still had 10% of the children arrived in a seatbelt left in a rear-facing convertible car seat, which means they have transitioned way too soon into a seatbelt to the point where they should have been riding in a rear-facing convertible car seat. So only 13% of the children that arrived in a lap and shoulder belt actually left in a lap and shoulder belt. So again, encouraging those caregivers to come back so every time they transition to the next step to be able to educate them is key to the work that we're doing. So our caregivers bringing older children to seat checks. So we noticed that our children that are arriving in booster seats, we had a very small portion. It was about 4% of the total seat checks. But of those children that are riding in booster seats, are they coming alone or are they coming as default with another child? So, and what we're seeing is, yes, the caregivers are bringing a younger child to have that car seat inspected and to receive education. And that child that's riding in that booster seat is coming kind of by default. And so generally speaking, we check any child under the age of 13. So only 2.1% of the vehicles that arrived at seat checks only had a child in a booster seat for that child to be checked and for that caregiver to have an assessment done on how that child was riding in the seat. So what does that mean for our outreach strategies and being able to educate caregivers on the importance of making sure that we continue to bring these children back in? So the next thing that we looked at was if caregivers were making at least one error, were they making more errors on their car seats? So we took a little dive into the misuse data and determined that if there was one harness error, that there were nearly 80% also had at least one installation error. So if we saw one harnessing error, almost 80% of those seats had at least one installation error. So not only do we need to educate the caregiver on choosing the proper car seat, but on using it correctly, making sure that that child is secured correctly and that car seat is installed correctly in the vehicle. So the next thing that we looked at was what was the preferred seating positions for children riding in car seats. And the preferred seating positions is those outboard seating positions. We have a 75% misuse rate in that middle back seat of a vehicle. And so caregivers are using outboards because of the lower anchors, but of those children that were riding in the center, we had a 75% misuse rate in that center seating position. So that was just a quick summary of some of the data that we've collected through the NDCF. If you have any additional questions or are looking for any additional data, please feel free to reach out. Here's my contact information, and I will send it back over to Sarah.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was wonderful. And there are some questions in the Q&A that we should have time for. So we're going to pause and do Q&A at the end of our next presenter. But really, thank you. That's some really great information to kind of start us off here this morning. As a reminder, if you have questions, you will not be able to unmute. So if you have a question that you would like to ask a speaker, please go over to the Q&A and ask your question there so we can make sure it gets covered during our session today. So with that, I would like to turn things over to Cass Herring from Safe Kids Worldwide.
Thank you all. Very excited to be here today. As Sarah mentioned a little bit earlier, I am the certifying body representative for the National Child Passenger Safety Board. Just to let you guys know that I will not be speaking on behalf of the Child Passenger Safety Board today, other than promoting one of the great assets that the board has created. So we'll be talking a little bit about some of the resources that are available for you to use for parents and caregiver education. And we recently released a FASTBAC that I'm going to go over with you. So you can just kind of look at what that gravity of injury is for children and why we do child passenger safety. We also recently released a new strategic plan, and with that have updated our vision and mission. So I just wanted to share that with everyone, especially if you're not familiar with Safe Kids. I know we have a ton of technicians on board, but just to make sure. So our vision is a world in which every child is protected from unintentional injury, and that ties in, I'm sure, to the mission of CYBEX and the work that you guys do in the field. And we work to reduce unintentional injuries to children ages 0 to 14 and build equitable and sustainable systems that support injury prevention. Sarah, I think I'm stuck. All right, thank you. So one of the first resources that I'm going to talk about, and I've tried to put QR codes on here, but this takes us to our car seat safety tips. There are lots of different pages that you can click on from here and resources. And, something that Jennifer mentioned in her data about non-use of tether anchors, we actually did a survey with parents a few years back that you can access here. That talks about non-use or not even understanding what the purpose of tether anchors are. So here's a great place that you can kind of go and look through the different resources that we have available. We even have them by age group. So if you're looking specifically at booster seat, we have a tab there for that. Or if you're looking about general safety tips, those are there as well. And there are downloadable versions if you'd like to share those with the parents and caregivers that you're working with. And the next thing that I wanted to share with you is the Ultimate Car Seat Guide. This is available in English and Spanish. So you can change the page actually to Spanish. That has a few basic safety tips for parents and caregivers, and they can kind of select a general age range that would provide them a best practice recommendation for the car seat their child should be in and how to use it. And then here's the fast fact. I love the data and I love Jennifer's presentation. So I think some of this actually ties into the findings of the car seat misuse. So the most recent data available for fatal and non-fatal injuries was 2021. These stats are taken from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's data set, as well as the CDC. So in 21, there were 746 fatal injuries and 122,000, a little bit over, non-fatal injuries. But looking at how we break that down into what that means to us. So there are about 14 fatal injuries per week. And that's a big statistic. And some of those, as we'll see in our next slide, are unrestrained. So we can make a big difference just by making sure that kiddos are in a restraint or proper restraint for their needs. So you see the fatal injury rate was slightly higher in that 4 to 7 age range, and looking at 0 to 3, kind of up towards the 3-year-old age range too. And that's something that Jennifer talked about in that transitioning too early or not being in the proper seat. In the data that she showed, that you can see reflected in the injuries and what's actually happening in the field. This data also breaks down the injury rate among different demographics and looking at the highest risk, and we have a higher risk of fatal injuries for Native American and Alaskan natives in this age group. So it tells us that we need to make an effort in making sure that we're partnering with these communities and providing education that's relevant to what their understanding is and making it salient for the populations that we're serving. And this is a great graphic, and you can actually download this fast fact from our website. It's on the same, you can access it from the same safety tips page that was previous. You can use that QR code. And Sarah, I'm happy you can share these slides if you want to do that. I'm not really sure. But this kind of tells you that quantifies injury in a dollar amount. And it's kind of staggering. So utilizing CDC data and calculating this, you see that these injuries that are preventable, can cost families and our society quite a bit. And then I wanted to highlight that we've done a little bit of an update updated a couple of pictures and changed the way the certification site looks a little bit. So Safe Kids Worldwide is the certifying body of child passenger safety technicians. We have right at 38,000 child passenger safety technicians and instructors. And we provide some guidance and policy and provide registration for courses and all of that fun stuff. So if you aren't a technician, but you'd like to find a technician, this is the page that you come to in order to do that. There are these great little bubbles that you can click on, or even at the top, find a tech. And that will allow you on the next page to kind of do a search for a technician that's in your area. So you can do a broad search if you're just looking at your state, or you can do a search by county. And just to preface this by saying, these are technicians who have agreed for their contact information to be posted publicly to be a resource for their community as a child passenger safety technician or instructor. You also have technicians who have taken extra training, such as school bus training, safe travels for all children, that's transporting children with special healthcare needs. So if you're looking for a technician that has a special skill set, then you can find them here. A few of the other things that you're able to find on the National Child Passenger Safety website are how to become a tech. So if you're interested in becoming a technician, this is where you're going to start. If you have questions, my contact information will be on a few slides later. So I'm happy to walk you through that process or answer any questions. If you are a technician, if you're looking for resources, questions and answers for policies and procedures, you're going to find that on the certification page as well. Technicians, instructors, and course administrators will be able to find information about the course administration process if you're hosting courses. Recertification, of course, we want to make sure that you have all of the resources available for you there. If you're looking to find a course in your area. And then the policies and procedure manuals is linked in several locations on our website. And I said that I am a member of the Child Passenger Safety Board, but here's a great thing that the Child Passenger Safety Board has put together. And these are great basic education courses that are free. You can utilize these as a team, and you can host and kind of see how your team is making progress. You can also, provide this information to parents and caregivers to learn about car seat basics. You can learn about children in hot cars or car seat basics for law enforcement as well. And these are relatively short courses, but it gives you a solid base. And if you aren't interested in becoming a technician, this gives you great educational information to provide to the people who come and talk to you about your products. And the hot cars one is available in Spanish, so it's a great resource, and I can't say enough about it, but just wanted to promote that a little bit. And that's at car seat training, carseateducation.org, like Sarah mentioned a little bit earlier. But thank you all for giving me a little bit of your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions when the time is right.
Thank you, Cass. That was great. There are a bunch of questions we're going to go through in Q&A right now, but I did want to go back to this screen just for 1 second because somebody, at least one person, has asked over in the chat. We will be recording this session and it will be posted, and this is where it's getting posted. As Cass said, this is our Child Passenger Safety Learning Portal, but as retailers, you can also access this as well. So you just have to create an account. It is free, and then you have access to those basic courses that she talked about, but this recording will also be listed there too. We'll throw those links in the chat too in just a minute. But we do have some questions. So I wanted to take a little bit of time with Jennifer and Cass and go through some of the questions that came up while you guys were presenting. So first, Grace asked, from a parent perspective, she's had some parents that have asked and been interested to see data. And she asked this, Jennifer, during your presentation, but I think it works for Cass too, because Cass presented a lot of really interesting data as well. So Jennifer, first, can you tell us how to find the NDCF data publicly?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. That's a great question. So you can find it in a couple different places. You can go to carseatcheckform.org, which is the homepage to the National Digital Car Seat Check Form. In the middle box, you'll see a box that says National Data. If you scroll down to the bottom, it'll say View Data Dashboard. So anybody who's a non-user can also take a look at the data that's available. And it's also, I should also mention, it is available on the National Child Passenger Safety Board website as well.
And thank you, Amy Artuso just posted that in the chat too. So that link is over there as well. But then Cass, can you remind us how to find the data that you said was available on the Safe Kids website too?
Yes, so you can go to safekids.org, just click on car seat safety tips. There's also, I'll send you a link. I'll put it in the chat in just a minute, but you can find that there on the Safe Kids website.
Then Jennifer, back to you. If somebody wants to use stats from the NDCF, how should they be referenced or potentially cited in any kind of communication if you wanted to use any of that material?
Sure, absolutely. So the material, the information that you find on the National Digital Car Seat Check Form website is publicly available. So you can utilize any of that information that is available if you're looking for additional support or resources for your program, and just making sure that it's referencing the National Digital Car Seat Check Form.
Great. Another question about your information. When the options for misuse, when somebody is entering data at a car seat check, somebody asked what stats reflect the misuse of lower anchors being used in the center seating position when that's not allowed. So maybe address, what are those misuse options available?
Absolutely. So there's several different choices. Anytime there's misuse identified, it'll open up an additional field for technicians to be able to click on and identify any additional misuses, and you can select multiple. So one of the options on there is to select that it was anchored incorrectly. The technician always has the option to select other and then manually enter in that information. So one of the questions, you can identify that it was misanchored, that they were borrowing the lower anchor. So you would be able to identify it that way.
Great. And then I think this really works for both of you. Looking at this misuse data and knowing what we know with our work in the field, somebody asked, how do you encourage parents to go over car seat installation information when they're saying they already know the information? How can you help encourage them that maybe there's a little education we could still provide?
Cass, do you want me to go first?
You go first, and then I'll add.
Absolutely. I think one of the best ways that you can do that if you're utilizing the NDCF data is to look at what those most common misuses are and talk the caregiver through it. So even though they may not think that they're doing it wrong, just by saying, hey, look, 70% of caregivers are misusing the car seat this way, let's take a look and see how let's see how you're using your car seat, and providing them with the resources that they need, utilizing the data that's available, and really drawing attention to say, hey, other caregivers are doing this, and they may have thought they knew better as well. Let's take a look and see how you're installing your car seat and see what we can do to make your child safer.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And I think sometimes we have to look at, how a parent came to us, right? So looking at what other factors may be affecting them that day. So just asking a few questions about, are you in a hurry? Would another time be better? Or just kind of like looking at where they got their information. And maybe it's somebody who has done their research and feel confident in that. And you could just, support them and saying, hey, I appreciate that you've done the work. But let's just do a quick check just to make sure. And it's always good to meet people where they are and kind of understand how they're coming to us.
Absolutely. And I would also say that, once we know better, we do better, right? Sometimes we don't know what we don't know until someone shares it with us. And so being able to use the data, like what Safe Kids has, the data that they've been able to provide, data through the NDCF, to say, hey, look, this is kind of what we're seeing in our area. Let's do what we can do to help make sure your child is safe.
Cass, there were a few questions about the Find a Tech portion of the website. So I'm going to ask a couple of them, but just so everybody knows also, if we don't get to your question during the Q&A, the speakers are able to go in after we're done and type in some responses to you. And if we can't get through it that way either, I can help connect you to speakers after the event. And somebody asked about CEUs. So as a reminder, this is a CEU session, and you will get your CEU certification or your certificate for your CEU tomorrow in an email from Zoom. So we'll cover that more in a little bit too. But on the Find a Tech, first, there's a number of technicians on the line who are all over the planet right now. So can you find a technician outside of the United States in the Find a Tech resource?
You may be able to. So the certification is a U.S. certification, but there have been people that have moved outside of the U.S. Or have taken a certification in the U.S. or territories that have addresses that are outside of the U.S. So it really just kind of depends on what the address is that the technicians have entered. So we do have technicians that live all over, but it's not really consistent from one region to the next.
All right. Thank you for that. And then can you just give some tips? Because, I know those of us that have worked with the website for a long time, I think we know that the best ways to plug in information to find a tech to get the most broad resources. And you talked to this in your presentation, but can you remind us how the best way to use that resource is when you're trying to find that tech near you?
Yes. So, if you don't have a technician that's represented in your county and you do a search that's really narrow down to the county level, that it might not turn up results. So I think that the least amount of criteria, the better. But I have some good news and something that I'm really excited about. So certification is undertaking an assessment of the certification program overall. So we're working on getting out surveys to technicians and instructors, and I would love it if you responded and provided us honest feedback about the things that we can do to improve. That includes the interaction with websites. That includes, processes, procedures, the things that we go through every day, even, CEUs and successes and barriers to certification, recertification. We want to make positive improvements. And we know that we have to get that information from the field. So that is one thing that we understand that we want to make updates to. It just makes sure it makes the most sense to do that in a holistic way, and where we're providing updates all at once. So I think that for now, if you're having trouble locating somebody, you can get in touch with one of your state contacts that you can find on the NHTSA website. I'll put that link in there shortly. Or you can email me, and I'm happy to help you find a technician close to you, or we could connect you with one of the Safe Kids coalitions that may be in your area.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both Jennifer and Cass, for being here with us today. It was a really great, informative presentation. So I hope the technicians and retailers on the line got a little bit out of both of those. Somebody also asked about slides. So as long as our speakers are okay with it, we will provide a PDF of the slide presentation. It will be in the email that you receive from Zoom tomorrow. It will be as a download link. We can't provide attachments in that email, but you'll get a download link and then you'd be able to download all of these slides from today. So thank you, Jennifer and Cass, for joining us today. We really appreciate your insights, and you guys can feel free to answer any more of those questions because there were a number of questions that we did not have time to get to. So again, if we can't get to everything, we will certainly follow up after the event. So our next presentation, we wanted to share some of what's going on in the regulatory landscape in the world of child passenger safety, because there's a lot happening right now out in the field. So for this, you're stuck listening to me a little bit more, but I wanted to give some credit to our VP of Child Safety, Phil Prisvalo. He and I worked on these slides together. He just couldn't join us today. So I am presenting on behalf of the two of us. So just to give some background in terms of when we talk about regulations, where does that regulatory process fit in, and how does that fit into our development and design of future child restraints? So we kind of start with that regulation. So this is a document. It's created by our regulatory body, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It comes in the form of Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. There's a process. We're going to talk a little bit about what that process is, but this sets the baseline for how our products must perform in a crash, and a number of other details that we'll talk through. We also have our own internal legal requirements that we want to meet. So we want to do things additionally outside of just what's required in the regulation. We do other testing in lots of different ways for lots of different reasons, because we feel like it's important for us to do our own due diligence with our product. And then we have consumer expectations to meet. So the person that's going to buy this product from us at the end of the day, we need to understand what that consumer wants and how they expect to be able to use this product and the functionality of it. But then we also have to think a little bit outside of the box too. And I think the technicians on the line will appreciate this. And after Jennifer's presentation on misuse that we see in the field, we know that what we expect the consumer to do is maybe not always what the consumer might end up doing with their product. So we have to think about those things through our testing and development of products as well. So background on the regulatory process here, it really starts with research. So there's research that happens in the field of child passenger safety and occupant protection all the time. There are a number of institutions that do really significant child passenger safety work and research into biomechanics and what is happening in the real world and in that test facility as well. And sometimes this research is actually sponsored by NHTSA. It's NHTSA funding a third-party agency to do this work. And then there's other agencies like the Center for Child Injury Prevention Studies that's kind of has industry participation as well as government participation. So as we learn things through research, it's the government's responsibility and job to figure out if we need to translate some of that research into practice. And they do that by updating regulations. So if in this case, NHTSA were to determine that there is an update that could be made that would be useful, the first step is to put out this notice of proposed rulemaking, or what we typically call an NPRM. And this is the government's opportunity to say to everybody, any citizen in the United States, and certainly to any of the interested and affected parties in the industry, this is what we think we want to do. This is why we think we want to do this. This is what's going to change. And in some cases, they'll ask us questions. We're considering this. Can you, industry, provide us a little bit of feedback about how you might feel in this situation? So then we're able to provide feedback because there's always a public comment period. So there's a period of time where that NPRM is out there, and anybody, any of you on the line today, anybody has the ability to provide comment back to NHTSA to say, this is how we think. This is what I feel about the changes that you're proposing. And the government has to respond to those questions. So then there's a period where we will get the response back to the questions that were asked. And this is insightful. It helps us understand, maybe where that regulation may go in the future. But ultimately, we have to wait for that final rule to be published. Once the final rule is published, that gives us all the information we need to know. It tells us what is changing, what we need to do, sometimes why we're going to do it this way and why the decisions were made that were made. And also then includes an implementation period for when that rule is actually going to go into effect. So what's important to understand there is a final rule will be announced, but things don't happen the very next day. So no matter what, there's going to be a little bit of time in which we're going to allow those affected parties to implement what those changes would be. And an example of this from a little bit ago, back in 2014, we updated those lower anchor weight limits. And that update came with a number of label and instruction manual requirements for car seat manufacturers to state really specifically from the regulation exactly what weight children could use a product with lower anchors. So this was really just labels and instructions. This wasn't a testing thing. This wasn't something where we needed to do a lot of additional work. But even just labels and instructions, there's a lot of work that goes on in the background with that. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of pieces that we need to think about in terms of quantity of labels that we might have printed. There's when do we make this switch with specific products, making sure we get all of the products covered. So there are a lot of different things that need to happen. So even something as simple as just updating the words that we say in labels and instructions, we still get an implementation period so that we can make that adjustment across our entire product line. As you can imagine, we might need a little bit more time when we do things that are a little bit more complex that involve crash testing as well. So FMVSS 213 is our car seat regulation. FMVSS is the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard. So 213 is what governs what we do as a child restraint manufacturer and those products that we can get out to you. 213 is really a performance-based standard. So this is NHTSA telling us how our products need to perform but they really aren't telling us exactly how we need to design the product in most situations. They leave that open so that we as car seat manufacturers can innovate and can create new things and new ways to do things and make hopefully life a little bit easier for consumers down the road. But they give us very specific performance metrics that we have to meet. And we do that right now in a frontal crash test and sort of coming up a side impact crash test. And we'll talk about that side impact in particular in just a minute, because that does have a new final rule, but it hasn't actually fully taken effect yet. So we'll talk about what that timeline looks like too. I think the dynamic testing is the most obvious part of what we do in terms of 213 compliance, but there is a lot of other stuff that is involved in that regulation. So it's important to kind of look at this holistically. There's also labels, instructions, the registration cards that we send to consumers to say, hey, let us contact you in the event of a recall. All of that information, there's a lot that's covered in the 213 regulation where we're required to provide specific information or specific warnings to consumers with really specific words and specific locations where that might be found on the product. And it's on us, the car seat manufacturer, to make sure we do all of those things the way that we are instructed. Additionally, there's regulatory compliance pieces to some of the component parts that we use. So on the left, you can see the buckle. Well, the buckle release pressure is something that is regulated in the standard. That buckle can't be so easy that any child could open it, but it also can't be so difficult to open that an older person or somebody with limited hand strength can't open it either. And additionally, that harness webbing that you see on screen, in the regulation, any webbing that touches the child's body has to be at least 1.5 inches wide. That's the requirement in the standard, because any thinner than that, and it could potentially cause injury, not spread out the crash forces the way that we expect that harness system to spread out crash forces. We also have to meet flammability standards. And the flammability standard itself is actually a totally different motor vehicle safety standard. It's 302. It's the interior surfaces of the motor vehicle. But in our child restraint standard, 213, it says, hey, you also are an interior surface in that motor vehicle, and therefore you, car seat, must also meet this standard. So in that standard, we actually put those fabric components into a chamber and we set them on fire and we measure the rate of flame spread. And the idea is it needs to move really slowly because you want to have the time to get the child out of the seat in the event of that fire emergency. And then finally, aircraft certification is also covered under our 213 regulation. Aircraft certification is completely optional. You do not have to make your product something that would be aircraft compatible. But if you are going to, all of the information about how to do that and how we have to label the product as such is included in that 213 standard. So while crash testing is mostly what we're going to talk about today, and you're going to see live in just a little bit, I wanted to make sure we covered all of these other topics too, because they are all included in that regulation. So let's talk about what we do right now. And right now we have a frontal crash test, and it's a 30-mile-per-hour crash test. And the number one thing that I want to make sure that folks, especially the non-technicians on the line, understand is that I get it. 30 miles per hour doesn't sound like a lot. But what we're talking about is not the speed, but the change in energy and the change in speed and how quickly that change in speed happens. So this, what we know from research is that this impact severity in our crash test right now is greater than 98% of all real world crashes. So this is indeed a very severe test. And a few equivalencies just to help wrap your brain around that. Basically, what we do in the crash test is this first. We go 30 miles per hour into essentially a concrete barrier. So 30 miles per hour, and you come to a pretty quick and immediate stop. This is also equivalent to traveling 60 miles per hour and running into a stopped vehicle. So think about more like your highway speed, traveling, and all of a sudden traffic comes to a stop. It's that kind of energy. Also equivalent to two vehicles traveling 30 miles per hour and impacting head on like you see in that image. This is what our current test bench looks like. When we talk about the test bench, it's that like lighter bluish gray foam that you see underneath that car seat. So the bench is the structure that the car seat is sitting on when we run our sled test. This is all regulated. So the whole design of this bench is included in that 213 standard. The cushion and the type of cushion and the thickness and kind of squishiness of that cushion is also all regulated as part of the standard. And then additionally, the way in which we attach the car seat to that bench is also regulated as part of the standard. So right now in our compliance testing, we use only a type 1 or lap only belt for most of our testing. The only time we use that type 2 lap and shoulder belt is when we are conducting a booster seat test. So I want you to think about that for just a minute. And in your head, think about the last time you were in a vehicle that had a lap only belt. And probably for most of the folks on the line, it's been a little bit since you even saw a vehicle that had a lap only belt. So the current standard as it's written right now, the design of this bench is based on the design of a much older vehicle that was representative of the vehicle fleet at the time that this regulation was written. Also included in the regulation is a whole family of crash test dummies or anthropomorphic test devices. So these are the kids with which we do our testing. You can see they range from newborn size all the way up to 10 years old. On screen, you can see the actual weight of the dummies that we use. But these dummies, each of them correlate with a range of weights. So when we design our test matrix for the testing that we're going to do, we have to look at the scope of our project and look at the range of weights we're going to allow for our car seat and determine from that which dummies fit in that range of weight options. So this is a test. We're not going to run a frontal test today. So this is the frontal test that you'll get to see today. This seat is actually a type 2 lap shoulder belt configuration, but I want you to notice kind of the squishiness of that foam during the test. You know, those that are technicians on the line, we talk about how everything in the vehicle moves towards the point of impact in that crash. So you can see how both that car seat and the dummy in the car seat, they're moving towards what would be the front of that vehicle. You can also see how much movement. This was an untethered test. So this was just lap shoulder belt. It is untethered. So you see the most head excursion that we would expect to see in that crash. I'll run it one more time for you. So when we are doing this and when our engineering teams are reviewing this information post-crash, we're looking for things like the integrity of the car seat. We don't want to see it fracture or separate in a way that would cause harm to a child. And then these dummies, most of them are instrumented. So we're also reading injury-related values like the HIC or the head injury criterion, the chest acceleration, which is giving us information on how the forces impact the head and the chest of the child and how that might relate to a risk of injury. And then we're also using, if you can see my cursor here, we're using these targets and the targets that you see on the dummy itself, and we're looking at movement. So forward facing, we're measuring the head excursion and the knee excursion. We're also in rear facing, we're measuring the angle of the seat back and how much it's rotating. And all of those metrics are in the 213 standard. So we understand where we need to fall within that compliance testing. But now we have 213A. So 213A is the new side impact standard. This was announced last summer. So we are in the midst of our implementation period right now. And I think probably the most important thing to recognize is that side impact is not new. Side impact is something that we've been doing for many, many years. And we've been doing this because side impact crashes rank almost equal to frontal crashes as a source of injury for kids. So we know that, we can't choose what kind of crash we might get into, and that in these side impact crashes, there's considerations for the kids that we are working with. So we've been doing this type of testing for many years. NHTSA has been working through this as well to try to figure out how can they regulate a test that is repeatable and that is something that we can use across the board for all car seat manufacturers. So that's what they've created with 213A. 213A is measuring what we call a near side impact. So that means that your car seat in vehicle is positioned next to the vehicle door that is impacted. So we gave you a few little illustrations here to help you understand. But I think the thing that helps me to think about with this is that the side impact crash is really, think of being like T-boned at an intersection. And that's the crash that we're trying to measure here. You have a vehicle that is moving forward that has the right of way that's going through this imaginary intersection here. And then you have another vehicle that maybe should have yielded or stopped or is running a red light and ends up crashing into the side of the vehicle. So that car seat is positioned on the side that is closest to where that other vehicle is interacting. This is what the new test bench looks like for 213A testing. It's a little bit different. The foam and the dimensions and design of the bench is more reflective of the current vehicle environment. So it's a little bit of a stiffer foam to start with. And then you can see we have this whole panel on the side with this white and gray foam as well. So that is meant to look like and to act as the intruding door from the vehicle. Because remember, in a frontal crash, we have that whole frontal area, the crumple zone of the vehicle that's helping to absorb crash forces. In a side impact crash, there's not as much vehicle structure next to the occupant. So now we've got to worry about how that door is going to interact with that car seat or with that child in that car seat. And think about the door. When you're sitting next to that vehicle door, it's not just a flat panel. So you see here, we have this gray panel at the bottom portion of our intruding door. That's meant to be like your armrest at that vehicle door. And the armrest is proud of that whole door panel. That's the white area. And then the door panel is proud of your window that you have sitting next to you. So that's kind of how this test is set up. We also have dummies, obviously, that we're going to test with. So we're borrowing the Krabby dummy, which is our 1-year-old, 12-month-old dummy. This is used in frontal testing right now. It is not instrumented. So for this dummy, we're using that to represent the younger children in the car seat. And we're just looking for what we call containment, that the dummy's head stays contained within the shell of that car seat during the crash. But then we have a brand new dummy, which is called the Q3S. And it's designed to be a 3-year-old dummy. And if you remember back to the 3-year-old I showed you a minute ago, it looks quite different than the frontal dummy. So this is a totally new dummy because that frontal dummy is instrumented and designed to be able to take crash forces from a crash moving from the front of the vehicle. So moving in one direction. The Q3S is designed and instrumented with sensors to be able to measure what's happening for that child in that lateral impact from the side. So you can see how they look quite different. The other thing that I want to call out with this is you'll notice we're testing with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and that's it. So the 213A side impact standard only goes up to 40 pounds. And NHTSA says the reason that they capped this at 40 pounds is because typically the height of that heavier, older child positions their head high enough in the vehicle that they can take advantage of the other side impact available in the vehicle, like your side curtain airbags, as an example. So that's why this is maxing up at that 40 pounds. And the biggest dummy we're using is this Q3S. So this is what the new 213A test looks like. The one on the left is running right now. Just to explain, so you can see that that sled is actually a little bit not centered. So it's actually at a 10-degree offset. And there's a lot of engineering that goes in behind this. We don't need to get into all of those details. But the idea here is we're mimicking that car seat going forward and a frontal component to that side impact crash. Because remember what would happen in that intersection, your vehicle was traveling forward when another vehicle came in at the side. So that's what that 10-degree offset is helping to show. Here's the same test from a different angle. Again, this time you can see a little bit more how that, blocker, side door is interacting with that car seat too. So then just to wrap up, we have a little bit more that we expect to have happening with 213 in the very near future as well. And that is a new updated frontal test. So the big changes here are a really updated frontal standard, as well as some label instruction registration updates as well. So those are the two areas that are really getting the most change with this upgraded 213. And what's important to know here is that our current 213 standard, again, I said more severe than 98% of the crashes in the real world. It has been proven successful. But as I mentioned from the beginning, we look to research to understand how can we improve the regulation? How do we better standardize and solve for safety with less variation in testing? And that's what they're looking for with this new upgraded 213. So this is kind of where we are in the process with the upgraded 213. We've been through the public comment period, there's been responses, and we're just kind of waiting on that final rule. This is similar to what we expect the bench to ultimately look like. So it looks a little bit more similar to that 213A side impact bench that you just saw. Part of this upgrade is to bring that bench more in line with the current modern vehicle fleet. We also expect that how we test, as in how we attach that car seat to the bench, will also be updated. So we expect to start using that type 2 lap and shoulder belt instead of that lap only belt, since that type 2 belt is way more prevalent in the modern vehicle fleet. So just, as a timeline here for what is happening with this upgraded frontal, NHTSA put out that NPRM back in October of 2020. There was a public comment period that ended a couple months later. They actually extended that comment period to the spring of 2021. And we expected that we might have that final rule in August of 2023, but we haven't gotten that yet. So we're hoping that maybe in the fourth quarter of the year, we expect some updates on what the timing is for that. We do know, however, that based on what was written in the NPRM, that following whenever we get the actual final rule, the implementation period is going to be a little bit phased. So we're going to start with some updates that'll be made around the product registration component, and that would be required to be compliant within about 180 days after that final rule. And then about a year after the final rule, there would be some labeling requirements that would at that point go into effect. And then we would have 3 years to do that full dynamic portion, because as you can imagine, when we change what we do in testing, there is a lot of testing that goes on in the background that we would need to be working through. On the side impact side, I don't have on here because we didn't want to make this arrow quite so long, but the NPRM for side impact was actually submitted in 2014. So that side impact has taken quite a bit of time, but we did get that final rule back in June of 2022 last summer. And our implementation date for 213A, the side impact, is June 30th of 2025. So what that means is that we can no longer manufacture a car seat after that time that does not comply with 213A. Anytime before that, we just have to keep doing our frontal test. But after June 30th, everything has to have both the frontal and the 213A compliance included. Now, we can always comply early if that's what we choose to do as a company. So that's what companies are working through right now, going through all of this testing and determining at what speed they're going to make some changes to their existing lineup. So just to finish out on this portion of our presentation, I wanted to share some overall messaging here that, number one, we always have an implementation period. Even like back when I said the simple things that seem so simple, like labels and instructions, really aren't quite so simple. There's a lot that has to go on, a lot of moving parts with those. So we always get some kind of phase in. But when we talk about things like the changing the way that we test our car seats, it takes a little bit more time to get that done. So we get that longer implementation period. Really important to know, especially for the retailers on the line, anything that's manufactured prior to the effective rule date is still okay to sell and to use. The effective rule date is about our date of manufacture. So those products are still appropriate to use. And that's really the big reason why we have expiration dates. because the expiration date will eventually ensure that all products out on the market meet current standards. So we expire them so the seats that are still safe, that still met standards that were appropriate when they were manufactured, eventually they expire so that everything meets these new and updated standards. And as always at CYBEX, we will continue to test above and beyond just those required standards. So that is a really good segue over to our team in Germany, where we're going to talk a little bit more about the work that we actually do as we're designing and developing products. So from here, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to spotlight for us Florian, who very kindly stayed a little bit late at work because it's a little bit of a time difference in Germany right now. And Florian's going to take us on a tour of our safety center. Go ahead, Florian.
Yeah, hello also from my side. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So
We got
I'm
you.
standing here in Bayreuth, Germany, from our headquarters, CYBEX headquarters on the CYBEX campus here in Bayreuth. And thank you very much for getting the opportunity to show you our safety center. Our safety center some different functions. So one, of course, developing new child seats, new products, new ideas. And the second one is also providing a place to have some trainings for external people, internal people. We had some, for example, police departments already here to give them an idea, to transfer some knowledge to them, what's important with respect to the topic child safety. So I give you first a quick tour through our lab here, and then afterwards we will see a nice side impact test. So as you can see here, it's our safety center. So here we have already a lot of awards we won in the last years. Here, of course, safety center. Most of the awards are related to child safety. We won about 500 awards in the last years. Some design awards, a lot of safety awards, of course. Yeah. So let's go up. So here we have a room with a good overview over our complete lab area. This room is also used, as mentioned, as a training area where we hold some trainings for external people, for even some authorities like the police departments here. And here we have a good overview about our sled room. You can see here in the center our sled system. My colleague Michael is already preparing the test for you, checking all details, checking the dummy settings to follow the procedure we want to have. You can see here on the left side, close to the wall, different benches. So at the moment we have the well-known ADAC. The ADAC is a consumer organization side impact bench on the sled, but we have some more here, like the ADAC front impact bench. This is car body. This is about a quarter of a car body and some others, but now I will go down and show you these in detail. So now we're entering the control room. Normally, this is the point where no external peoples are allowed, but today I'm happy to be allowed to show you all the details of our lab. So as you can see here, this is our control area where our technician Michael has his main working place. Here's our central control unit. We control the sled system and also the high-speed cameras. So we have 6 high-speed cameras in total to be able to record the tests from every angle we want to have. We can even attach the cameras to the sled to get a good view, good overview what happens during the test. Now we're getting a little bit closer to the sled itself. So it's quite a compact sled system. It's just about 18 meters in length. The system here is working a little bit different, like you would imagine a real crash. So when you think about a front impact, driving a car towards any obstacle, Worst case, for example, a bridge pillar, your car will be stopped quite fast, but your body wants to move forward. If you drive your car, if you're a driver, you got this nice airbag in front of you in the steering wheel, which catches you, but the movement is towards the steering wheel. The same happens if you have quite a powerful car, put the rear gear in and accelerate to the back. So the car wants to move, your body wants to stand still, therefore you got the relative movement again to the steering wheel. So you got the same kinematics of your body, and in our case, we got the same results, same values from the dummy. From the other side, you can see quite good the door panel and the bench. In this case, similar to the new FMVSS standard, it's also turned by 10 degrees to simulate, as explained already, with a forward movement of the hidden car. So here's some detailed view of our different benches. This is it was a complete car. So we cut away everything which is not needed, which avoids a good view to the scenario, what we want to see, to the movement of the dummy, and also to the child seat itself. The important things we kept, so the rear bench and also ISOFIX connectors, for example, the retractor belts is still in. We got two different benches. It's mainly, of course, in Europe here in Germany, so this is more related to European standard, to R129 in this case. This is quite a nice bench because this can be turned in every direction, so we can simulate a front impact, side impact, and also rear impact. This one is the old R44 bench, which is no more in use because the R44 regulation is no more in force, so it's just for internal research tests. So for the next room, I have to excuse myself. So I have just to pass one room where we have some prototypes in, so I have to cover the camera for a short moment. Just a second. So now we have a special room here. It's our emergency room where we take care about our dummies. Here, for example, the Q1 dummy just needs a standard check, some maintenance that we're doing here. So here's a part of our dummy family, starting from the Q0 on the left side, the smallest available dummy from the Q series dummies, up to the Q10 on the right side. So it's just a side fact, quite an expensive family. If you think, for example, the tallest one is about 250,000 euros worth, so quite expensive dolls we are playing here with. Additional, we have here just to show you some measurement devices where we measure internal dimensions, but to this topic I will come later again. And last but not least, overturning rig, where we can simulate overturning of a car in every direction, to the front, to both sides, and even to the rear. So it's also an important factor when it comes to analyzing real crashes. So sorry, I have to cover again. I'm going back to the flat room. So now I'm back. I have to leave this main sled room now because Michael is preparing the test. And when we are running tests here, nobody's allowed to be in this room because every time something can just separate from the sled, even from the bench. So it's a little bit dangerous. So nobody is allowed to be here and all the doors need to be locked. And you run a test. Therefore, I'm in the control room and Michael is preparing the test. So this will take just a few minutes, and during this time I can explain or can show some information about our development strategy and our basically worldwide network. So here you can see an overview. There we have research labs, there we have some development centers. Of course, CYBEX, in the first step was a European company. We have the headquarters here in Bayreuth, and the child safety development team is located in Vienna. Coming to the US side, so here we have some different locations where we can run tests, where we can develop, where we have some resources to develop new seeds, and additional, I think quite clear, also in China, Kunshan, close to Shanghai, we have a big testing facility and also some development engineering center to have some detailed engineering. Focusing on the US market, so we have different very external third-party labs for verification. One in Canada, a lot you can see in the United States, but also some even one in Australia and one as mentioned in Shanghai. So some words to how we start a project and what we're doing in the first step. So our biomechanic team is looking in the first instance to the key dimensions, analyzing some entomorphic dimensions for the intended size range of the seed, defining some key dimensions so that we make sure that our products are fully usable over the full size range we want to have them, and have some comfort and can you go back for a minute? Yeah. Okay, so we're also using CAE simulations. So you can see here on the right side, two different reasons. First, you can see here on the lower part, in CAE and computer simulations, you can cut wherever you want. So you can even have a look inside of the seed, which is basically almost not possible when we run tests here. So we can just see from outside of the seed some deformations, whatever happens inside, some breakage, and their simulation, CAE simulation, is really helpful. Additionally, we can also simulate real child bodies, as you can also see on the lower picture on the right side. So we are not just focusing on crash test dummies. So we also take a look to the real world, because we want to save the life of kids, not of dummies. So we are also considering the real bodies of the children, but that's just possible in computer simulation. As already also mentioned, we are not just relying on official certifications, some regulation tests. We're always looking to the real world, what can happen in real world. And there we are already doing a lot of tests since a long time, which are far above the official regulations. For example, if you want to get a 129 European standard certification for a child seed, you need to run frontal impact tests with 50 kph, about 30 miles per hour. But internally, we are already testing with up to 50 miles per hour. So much more faster. And also, as you can see here in the center, side impacts are part of our development since a long time. Officially in the regulation in force since 2015 was the R129 regulation here in Europe. So we running also for the US seeds these side impact tests internally already since quite a long time. So we know we have a lot of knowledge about this, and also some component tests. So we are not just again here relying on official tests, what is required by the regulations in Europe, R129 or the FMVSS regulation. So we always think what can happen in real life, what is important, what kind of temperature, for example, can we see in real cars. So we are also testing our materials to this temperature, some moisture, and so on. So far above the regulation. So we have some special seeds where the regulation is really limited to tell us what to do and how to do it. So we have to think about by our own what again can happen in real life. So here's a good example. It's our Anoris T. It's in Europe here, well-known, famous seed because it's really the best safety awarded last year. And this is a seed with an airbag. It's an impact shield. And here, of course, some special requirements needs to be considered. On the left side, you can see this overturning. At the center, of course, if you have an airbag in front of the kid, what can happen if, for example, if the kid falls asleep and the head is directly on top of the airbag, what happens if the airbag ignites? We're checking the reality, basically. On the right side, you can see also one scenario. You are thinking about what happens if somebody is climbing around inside the car, and if you have some misuse or whatever, and the airbag will be ignited, and a second person is close to the airbag. Have we any risk here? So we did for this project over 1,000 development tests to cover all these real life situations. Okay, here you can see a video from an external lab from the seat I mentioned, with the airbag in front of the dummies. And here you can see quite good, similar as a car airbag in the steering wheel. It catches the head. But here's the secret of this airbag system is that we catch the dummy basically from the knees up to the head. So the airbag is wrapped around the impact shield. So we have almost no movement, no kinematics in the dummy area. So the kids are completely protected from 1.5 years up to 6 years. It's the size range or the age range for the seat. So now we can switch to our real crash. So Michael will start the sequence now. From now on, it takes about 2 minutes. So I can show you some details. This is the view from our control unit here, from our PC. We have 2 screens here. On the left side, you see the software for the cameras. So as mentioned, we have 5 high-speed cameras. And you can see them. One is attached to the sled, and one is here on the left side on this tripod in front of the sled. They can record up to 4,000 pictures per second to record, to show every millisecond what happens during this time, to be able to analyze it really in detail. You can show your view to our dashboard here. So it's our control unit. I can point a little bit to it. So here we have a countdown going down. So from 70 seconds to we have 20 seconds left. You will hear a warning noise right before we start the test. And then it's very important not to blink with your eyes because it's so fast. So if you blink in the wrong moment, you will not see anything. But I will tell you a second before we start the test again. So now we are ready. Michael is pushing the button, so you can see our light units. That's good. And now we start the test. So that's it. So it was a simulation of a crash with about 30 miles per hour side impact. So a car is hit by another car with about 30 miles per hour. As you might have recognized, you cannot see anything. So therefore, we are using our high-speed cameras. So we can show now 2 videos. They are pre-recorded because it will take some time to get them down from our cameras. Files are quite large, so about 1 gigabyte per video. So it will take some time. So I can show you some videos which we recorded in advance. So the first one shows a seat with our well-known famous LSP system. This is a small gray flap on the side. And if you take a detailed look to the seat, the upper part, we still can see a gap between the seat and the door panel. So now you can still see a gap. And the seat is a little bit turning to the side, so away from the door, from the area where the car is hit by another car. So in this way, we can protect the kids quite good to bring them a little bit away from the the dangerous zone, and also allow some space for the head to decelerate over a longer time. So the values are much lower, so we can reduce the loads on the kids by an average about 25%. So when we switch to the next video, we have a video without this LSP system. And again, if you see the upper part of the seat, it hits directly the door panel. The loads are going directly to the kid without deforming any element like we have seen before with the LSP. So there's no part which is taking the load, and we got the full load on the dummy on a short distance. So it's directly going to the head, to the neck, to the chest of the dummy in real life, to the kid. So as we're using here the Q series dummies, there's also now the Q3S introduced in the FMVSS standard. So this is similar to our front Q3S dummy. So we have already a similar test like the new one in the US, here in Europe since a long time. Okay, so that's from my side. I'm going back to Sarah to continue.
Thank you, Florian. That was amazing. I have not seen the dummy room before, so that I think was a highlight for everybody too. So thank you for that. There are definitely some questions, and I promise after our next presentation, we're going to cover off on some of those questions too before we close out today. But first, I want to introduce Jon McGuire again from our product team in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's going to chat about some of the new things we have going on.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Florian, that was super impressive. Hard to follow a live crash test, so I'll see what I can do here, but really appreciate the tour, and I think that was very exciting overall. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about CYBEX innovation over the years and in respect to advanced car seat development from a safety standpoint. Many of you may know that CYBEX has always been recognized as a leader in car seat innovations globally around the world. And when we are kicking off new car seat projects, we always base our design and development on what we call the SDF principle. And basically what that means is, number one, we're going to focus on safety, then follow that by design, and then thirdly, followed by function. And CYBEX is committed to advanced car seat safety development. To that end, we employ hundreds of engineers around the world, whether they're sitting, with Florian in our headquarters in Bayreuth, Germany. They could be at our Vienna Design Center. They could be with us here at the Charlotte facility or our factory in China. But all of the engineers are working, collaboratively around the world on the advanced car seat development for all CYBEX products. We utilize advanced engineering and development. We're also using computer-aided engineering to do simulations on car seats from a development standpoint, having access to state-of-the-art test lab facilities like Florian just showed us, as well as us using third-party labs in the United States. All of this together allows us to really drive disruptive innovation in car seat safety and improves our speed to market overall, which is a huge advantage from a CYBEX standpoint. We hold hundreds of patents for car seats globally as well. We've been recognized, agencies like ADAC that Florian mentioned with over 500 awards. Additionally, in the United States, we are recognized through many top review picks from online agencies. We're recognized by JPMA with awards, as well as awards from the ABC show. So highly recognized throughout many third parties throughout the industry. As I go through the slides and I talk about car seat innovations and safety, they really fall into three different buckets. The first being technology to support ease of use. As we talked about, if a car seat's not installed properly, it's not safe. Secondly would be just pure innovation for safety advancement, and this is like advanced technologies. And then third would be technology to support longer use and fit for the child, as well as comfort for the child overall. Sarah, you can go to the next slide. So I wanted to go back to what Cass and Jennifer really highlighted. And for us at CYBEX, it really starts with the numbers and the statistics. On average, 3 children were killed and an estimated 445 children were injured per day in traffic crashes in 2021. When you think about it, that's a staggering number. And if you look at the dashboard below, 162,000 child traffic injuries, 746 child traffic fatalities, 33 children died from vehicle heat stroke. And then lastly, 66% of car seats were not installed properly. Our goal at CYBEX is to reduce all of the above numbers as much as we can. We work on this every day by developing, new technologies, car seat safety innovation, as well as innovation that are going to improve ease of use. So that is our goal. That's what we're all here to do at CYBEX every day of the week. If you can go to the next slide. So Sarah did a great job summarizing some of the changes coming with the 213 regulatory standards. I wanted to just kind of focus in at a very high level of what's required from a testing perspective. So in order for a car seat to be sold by any brand or manufacturer in the United States, it has to pass the Federal Motor Vehicle Standard FMVS 213. And as part of that testing, there are certain things that are basically measured. First being head excursion, second being chest G's, the last one being structural integrity, basically an integrity test that's run to make sure that there are no cracks or defects in the product. So really the point here is that, everybody needs to pass the minimum requirements of the FMVS standard, and that's without the use of any additional safety features. So as an example, if a car seat had a load leg, we have to pass that test without the use of that load leg. We're not allowed to use the load leg in order to pass that minimum FMVS 213 standard. So the point here is that CYBEX car seats include a lot of different safety features that will improve the performance of that car seat in the event of a crash that is above that minimum requirement. Additionally, going above what's required, we test all of our car seats to 2 times the federal crash test standard, and that's for the structural integrity test. So again, going above and beyond and make sure we're never going to have any defect or structural integrity issues with our products. If you can go to the next slide. Oops. So to highlight some of those additional safety features and installation features, again, how are we driving our car seats to be the safest in the market, as well as reducing that misuse from an installation standpoint? The first one's going to be the LSP. Florian did a great job highlighting that with the crash test. Again, LSPs, which is linear side impact protection, that reduces the forces on the child in the event of a crash by 30%. And until this new side impact standard comes into play, we've been incorporating side impact features in our products for the last 8 years. And we've been testing those to the European standard because it wasn't a US standard. So that's a great example of how we're ahead of the technology at CYBEX. The next one being anti-rebound bar. So the anti-rebound bar, which is incorporated into the base, can reduce the forces on the child up to 30% in the event of a front impact crash. The next one being a load leg. Load leg absorbs energy in the event of a crash by up to 30%. And then the last one being sensor safe. If you're not familiar with sensor safe, that's our smart technology. It's a Bluetooth enabled chest clip that communicates via a phone application, and it will alert you if your child happens to undo the chest clip. It'll tell you if the temperature is too hot or too cold in the vehicle. And then lastly, it'll alert you if a child is unintentionally left in the vehicle. Again, back to the 33 children that died due to vehicle heat stroke. This is what we're doing to try to minimize that number. If you move over to the right-hand side, this is where we get into features that we've added to our products that are going to improve ease of installation. So the first one being rigid latch, or if you're familiar with some of the European technology, it's called Isofix. Basically, it's a one-click rigid latch, and I'm going to demonstrate this as we get into the products, but it easily deploys from the seat. You can install it in 5 seconds. Anybody can install this, and the nice thing is it doesn't matter if I do it or somebody else does it. We can get that seat to the same level of tightness from an installation and fitment standpoint. So it's a great install. The second one, if you're not using the rigid latch or our push-on latch connectors, we have a safe lock belt tensioner. So this is a simple door that opens up. You route the belt through. It takes out all the excess slack in the belt and provides a tight install. The next one will be the no rethread harness system. And the reason this is important is that the harness automatically adjusts with the headrest, so you know that you have the right placement for your child. The next would be a rotating seat. And the reason rotating seats are important, and we've seen a lot of rotating seats enter the US market over the last 2 years, the ability to rotate the child so that it's in a boarding position facing the door, and you have easy access, so you can adjust the harness, you can adjust the chest clip, make sure that everything's in the right position for your child. And then lastly, we are incorporating QR codes on all of our products. So if somebody's installing a seat and they don't understand the installation or have any questions, they can easily click the QR code and it links directly to a video, and it'll show them exactly how to install that product into the vehicle. So these are just some, additional safety and ease of use features that we're incorporating into all of our CYBEX seats. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of flip over to a different room here, and I'm going to walk you through 3 of the CYBEX seats and really highlight some of the features that I just talked about here. So give me like 10 seconds and I'll be there.
All right, I'm here. Okay, so I've got Brian McKean here, who's running the camera. Brian's a senior product manager that works for me here in Charlotte, and he's working on all the car seat developments as well. We wanted to talk about 2 of our newest car seats, the Cloud G Lux, the 8-ton G Swivel, and then we're just going to highlight some features on the Sorna S that's been in the market since 2020. So I'll start off here with the Cloud G Lux. This seat launched in April of this year, and really the big innovation with the Cloud G Lux is that it has a comfort extend recline. So you can easily squeeze a lever on the top of the seat and recline the seat down. It provides 45% more recline versus a standard fixed infant car seat. The importance of that is if you think about people that are using car seats as a travel system, you put the child into the vehicle, you go to the mall, you take the seat, put it into a stroller. This gives you the ability to recline it, and it's not recommended to leave your child in that fixed position for extended periods of time. So a great comfort feature for the child. Cloud G Lux also has a full XXL extended canopy that provides UV protection. It also has ventilation built into the canopy. Talk about the linear side impact protection. With this seat, it's deployable. You simply open up the LSP, and that will provide improved side impact performance, and then you can easily close that down. On all of our car seats, you'll see this Y pattern on the back of the shells, and what that is that's ventilation that goes through the plastic, and it will align with channels in the foam. Again, providing airflow to the child. One of the big complaints with car seats, specifically infant seats, that kids are always sweating in the seat. So that's a great feature as well. You will see this blue clip on the back of the seat. That's the European belt guide. If you happen to use the seat without the base, it just provides for a more secure installation. If I move to the interior of the seat, you will see the no rethread harness system, again, allowing you to adjust the headrest and the harness at the same time to provide the best fit for your child. You'll also notice the sensor safe chest clip that will send you alerts to the well-being of your child. All of our fabrics are FR chemical free. So you'll see that across the board with all of our CYBEX car seats. And then if I move to the base, move the shell here. The first thing that stands out is the load leg. And we talked about the advantage of the load leg, reducing forces by 30%. It's a 3-position load leg. So multiple adjustment points for outboard or even center positions in a vehicle. The next thing to highlight is the rigid latch. So rigid latch, again, you simply deploy the latch connector on both sides of the base, align this with the hooks in the vehicle, push it into place. You get a nice, snug, tight installation in less than 5 seconds, and anybody can do it. So it's a great install. The anti-rebound bar, which is incorporated into the base, again, reduces forces in the event of a frontal crash. If you're not using the rigid latch, which is what we would recommend from an installation standpoint, we do have what's called a safe lock belt tensioner. You simply open up this door, route the belt through, take slack out, and then push this tension arm down. It'll take out the rest of the remaining slack and provide a really solid installation. So that is the Cloud G Lux. Next, I'll move over to the Aton G Swivel. So this is the only swivel infant car seat in the market today. It's in the loading position, as you can see now. But to rotate the seat, you simply pull this gray lever, and you can rotate it 180 degrees in either direction. So the advantage of this that I mentioned earlier is obviously if you're standing outside the vehicle, you're looking directly at your child. You can see that the harness is in the right position, the head's in the right position of the headrest, the chest clip is in the right position. But also the importance of this is as your child gets to be 18 to 22 pounds, people tend to start to leave the infant car seat in the car. They don't remove from the base, they just move the child and put the child into a stroller. The ability and the ergonomics of just accessing this from a loading position is just much better. And really, this seat becomes kind of like a mini rear-facing convertible because it extends the life of the seat because you can access it so easily. And then you can just rotate it back to the fixed position. This also has an XXL canopy with UV protection, similar to the Cloud G Lux. It also has, again, the no rethread harness system. So you get this advantage here, no rethread harness. There is an option of this seat that comes with the sensor safe chest clip as well. And then you'll notice that it also has the same European belt guide that you would use if you're not using the base. Another great feature with this is once it's installed into the vehicle, we have a recline system where you can simply adjust the seat and then use the pendulum indicator to make sure you've got the right position for your vehicle. So that's a really big advantage that you can do it after it's installed into the vehicle. It's got a single hand release to remove it from the base, and that is the same lever that you use to remove it from the stroller, and that's across all of our infant car seats. And again, highlighting the ventilation Y pattern that we talked about, that's consistent across all of our seats. If we look at the base, this has push-on latch connectors from an installation standpoint, but if you're not using the push-on latch connectors, you simply rotate what we call the adapter to the loading position. It has a similar strong arm installation that you open up, route the belt through, take the slack out, push this down, that removes all the remaining slack and provides a really tight installation. And then lastly, it also has an anti-rebound bar, again, reduces forces on the child by 30% in the event of a frontal crash. And this will simply install that. This seat launched in June of this year. And again, it's available in the market today. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on the Sirona S. So the Sirona S launched in Q1 of 2020. It was the first convertible car seat with load leg to enter the US market. And to date, it's still the only convertible car seat that has a load leg. Again, an additional safety feature that CYBEX has incorporated into this convertible. It's 4 to 65 pounds. One thing to note about this product is that you can use this seat to 50 pounds rear facing. So it does have extended use in that rear facing mode. Again, similar no rethread harness system from an adjustment standpoint. It does have sensor safe technology. Obviously, this is a bigger chest clip that's used with the toddler. But the key feature is really the innovation of the rotation, which is a one-hand rotation, where you simply push up, rotate the seat. Again, the advantage being that boarding position. The child is facing me when I'm standing outside the vehicle. I can easily lift them up and put them into a stroller or set them on the ground to walk. The other thing is it's a one-time installation. So once I install in rear-facing mode and I want to move to forward-facing mode, I can simply just rotate the seat and there's no need to reinstall it. So that's a great feature of the Sirona S. One other feature to highlight would be the side impact protection, a little bit different design than the Cloud, but same concept where this reduces the forces on the child by 25%. Then I can simply click this back in and rotate it back into place. So that's what we wanted to cover on the CYBEX products today. I appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully this gave you a good overview of some of the things that we're doing to drive safety and innovation into all of our products, and really demonstrate to you our technical capabilities, things that Florian showed you from the lab, and our abilities to really drive that next generation of safety technology into all of our products. Thanks again for everybody's time, and I'm going to pass it back over to Sarah.
Thanks, Jon. I'm going to go a little off script and do a couple of questions right now before I go back to sharing our presentation deck. Because there are a number of questions that came in, and we're ending in 9 minutes. So I'm not going to hold us long. I don't want to go over our time. So I promise we will go through all of those questions that were submitted. We will provide feedback following the webinar, so we can get you answers to all of those burning questions. But I wanted to cover a few that came up. So first, I'll handle the one that came in about the regulatory presentation. Somebody asked, if the regulation changes and a car seat that doesn't meet the new regulation is not expired yet, would it be recalled? And the answer there is no, because when it was manufactured, it needs to meet the regulation that is current as of the manufactured date. So even when that new implementation date comes out for like 213A, we know that that's June 30th of 2025. A seat that is manufactured on June 28th of 2025 does not need to be compliant with 213A because we have not hit that implementation date. And then it's still fine to use. It's still appropriate and was manufactured under the regulation that was in place at the time of that date of manufacture. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. Florian, if you're still there, there was a question about what happens with car seats after we test them. So do you just test that one sample once? Do we reuse that sample? Can you speak to what happens after that crash test?
Yeah, so indeed we are using the samples just one time. So the samples will all be disassembled and complete every part. So we are checking every part inside of the seat, and then it makes no sense to assemble them again. And it's also, so it's quite an effort to do the analysis, and so it's, even all parts would be still in good shape. We never can be sure that some parts are damaged inside, so we cannot see it. So we had to X-ray them to find every damage. So sad to say, but yes, we have to destroy them after one test and use a new one for the next test.
Yep. Can you talk about how that works with the foam too? So that the foam pieces that we use as that test bench, how do you reuse those?
The foam from the bench. So this is quite a special foam, so it needs to rest for about half an hour, and then it can be reused. So it needs to be certified at least once a month. So we have a special drop test where we analyze the behavior, the characteristic of the foam, and if we see here any deviation, we throw it away, take a new one.
Great. Jon, if you're still there, there were a couple of questions about Cloud G. First, somebody asked about rigid latch and vehicle compatibility, and if we've noticed any incompatibility in vehicles. So if you could maybe speak to the testing and the fit studies that we do with vehicles.
Yeah, sure. So with all of our seats, we basically test like the top 20 vehicles that are manufactured and produced in the US. In addition, we have a vehicle listing from Consumer Reports. And then separate from that, just over the years, we've highlighted kind of vehicles that can sometimes be an issue. Let's just call it that. And we test in all of these vehicles throughout our entire development process. So we feel very good about vehicle fitment from an installation standpoint. The Cloud, like I said, the Cloud G has been shipping since April, and we don't have any documented, non-compatibility vehicles that have come back through our consumer services group.
Great. And then one other Cloud G question on the comfort recline. Does a tight harness affect your ability to recline that backrest?
No, so the harness plays out when you actually adjust the seat. and then it'll basically take that back out once it's in the upright position. So everything is automatically adjusting as you use that comfort recline. And then just one thing to highlight, because I didn't say it, but that recline is only able to be used or functional outside of the base. It does not recline when it's in the base, only when it's outside of the base.
Perfect. Thank you, Jon. I'm going to go back to sharing our slides for just a minute so we can wrap up with some announcements. We wanted to share a few things that are going on with our team right now. So throughout the month of September, you can get 20% off any of our gold car seats. So this is our Child Passenger Safety Month promotion. We've also started a partnership with a group called Tiny Hood, and we've collaborated with them to create the ultimate guide to choosing and using car seats. So you can scan the QR code on screen. They offer on-demand classes from leading experts that guide parents through every step of their parenting journey. So we're excited to partner with them. We're also very excited to partner with Room to Grow. So this is a 3-year program that's providing support to families raising babies in difficult and challenging circumstances. So we at CYBEX are donating over $200,000 in car seats to this program over the next 3 years, and we're really excited about that. Additionally, we're really happy to say we have 2 products in the running for JPMA's Innovation Award this year. The Koya and Orfeo strollers are both up for the Innovation Award, and that voting is available on the JPMA website.